All right, everybody. So today we're going to be making this little shelf and installing this little LED 18-inch light that we got from Home Depot. So to be fair and to be upfront, this is going to be made with super basic tools. That was kind of the idea that I had behind this. Also, this is not going to be a perfect fit for what we need in my house. It's just going to be a temporary setup so that we can get this done and have some light over the stove. The overhead light is behind you. When it's on, it casts shadows over the stove and it makes it harder to cook. So since we don't have a vent hood and we don't plan on getting one anytime real soon, this is another option that we're going to do. And as you could see from the very beginning, probably, the walls are not finished. So this won't be the finished version of what we will have there for the lights, but it works for now, and it gives you guys an idea of how to build a couple of simple things that you might need. So what I'm doing here is, I didn't cut any of these, by the way, just so you know. These were already scraps that I had around, which is also why they're not a perfect fit, because I don't want to cut anything yet until we get it all finalized in style. But these are pre-finished or pre-primed trim boards, like baseboards or ceiling trim, door trim, whatever. We wanted the 4.5-inch board, which is, the 1x5, quote unquote, that you buy pre-finished. And that's how deep we wanted the shelf to come out from the wall. There is a lip that is there from the tile that the previous owners had put on the wall. And so I am going to set this down on top of that lip, so that'll give it a little bit of support. So I'm using a 1x2 to be the shelf bracket, which you'll see here in a minute. Currently what I'm doing is just splitting the 1x5 in half lengthwise, and I'm measuring out the center point so I know where center is on this board. And since that 1x2 is a different length, I'll have to measure it by half or measure it for length, split it in half, and then make a line in the middle of it, and I'll line up the middle of the 1x2 and the line of the 1x5 where it's centered, so that they are centered even though they're not the same overall width. So also along with that, I am drilling 5 holes that are evenly spaced from end to end on the 1x5, because I am going to use sheetrock screws to screw the 1x2 into it. So I drew the lines. I brought the holes in 1/2 inch from the back edge of the 1x5, and now I've put the 1x2 on there, as you can see. And I did pre-drill the holes in the 1x5 because I don't want the screw fighting with trying to go through the 1x5 and into the 1x2 all at the same time. So by pre-drilling a pilot hole, the screw will move more freely through the 1x5 and cinch the 1x2 down. These boards, if you've ever worked with any of these trim boards, they're not perfectly square or straight. So I started in the center, making sure the board was, the two boards were centered at that 90 degrees. And I am adjusting the 1x2 to be along the back edge flush for that 90 degrees. And so now you have a shelf. It's a super simple shelf, but it's a shelf nonetheless. If you were really worried about it, and if this was going to be like a long-term structure that I was going to put up there, I would have countersunk those screws so that I could putty them and paint them, because, black sheetrock screws are not the most appealing, and that's not what you probably want visually. Plus, you could paint the screws, but they're going to be, visible. You're going to see the difference in material, and you're going to see the cross hatch from the Phillips head in the screw head. So it's better to countersink them and paint them if you want it to look the best, and cover it with putty and then paint them. But once again, this is temporary for me. So basically all I'm using here, if you are making it a special length, you're going to either need a circular saw or a jigsaw or even just a pull saw like a traditional carpentry saw. That would all work to cut it to your length. You're going to need the measuring tape, which I have here in my hand right now, something to mark with. I have this pencil, which is on a lanyard. I have that pencil I laid down, but I also have one clipped to my collar that's on a lanyard. I'll talk about that tool in the future. I really like that tool. And then also, I have a drill with a 3/16 drill bit, and I also have, multiple screws. I think I have 4 for the back that are going to attach it to the wall, and I used 5 1 1/4 sheetrock screws to attach that back bracket to the base of the shelf. And so if the tile wasn't there, because the tile sticks out with grout and everything about 3/8 of an inch, if the tile wasn't there to give support to the bottom of the shelf and help wedge it up against the wall, I would have probably put side corners at the ends of the shelf to make it more stable, but I didn't need to because I have support under it so they can stay open. And as you can see, I divided, the back length of that little bracket, that wall bracket, into quarters, and I drilled holes so that I can screw it into the wall. Now I split the length of the shelf in half again, and then I divided that into not quite quarters because I didn't want it to be quarters, but close to quarters because the light is 18 inches long and I want the light centered on this under the shelf. And now I'm just marking out the center between the front edge and the back edge of the shelf to screw the brackets to the shelf or the LED light on. These are just little metal spring brackets that clip onto the light itself. The light has grooves on the front and back of it, and when you screw these brackets into the shelf, you push the light in and it snaps in. And it's pretty easy to get in, pretty easy to get out. The light was super cheap. I want to say the light was like $15 or something, and it's an 18-inch LED. It is a warm color, so it's more yellowish, but it definitely is worth the value, in my opinion, from Home Depot. This is a Bauer or Harbor Freight 4-volt screwdriver, and I actually have found it to be way more handy than I thought it would be. I bought it to review it for my channel, see what it was, what I liked about it or didn't like about it, and it actually drove the screws into this soft, pine trim wood that I'm using as the shelf, and it did a great job. It actually sunk the screws pretty well, but didn't have such force that I had to worry about like overdriving them and bending the brackets or anything like you might run into if you're using an impact driver and or a drill. And it definitely saved my hands from getting blisters or sore from trying to use a screwdriver. Now, these screws were pretty small, so it didn't matter. So there's the light real quick that just clips into those 2 little metal brackets. Now I'm over the stove. Of course, I'm going to measure center over the stove here. I'll go back to that Harbor Freight screwdriver soon. Now I'm just putting a line on the wall in center, and I have a line on the bottom of the shelf that marks center so that I can line them up together, and it is going to be center at that point. Now, I am using the drill and 1 3/4 inch wood screws to screw this in to the wall. There are a couple of studs there, and then some will just be in sheetrock. It's not very heavy. I don't need, anchors to go in the wall. So I'm doing that now. And there's the light. Now, what you'll see here in a moment is that after my wife and I, after she came out and looked at it, we discussed it. We decided she wanted a little cap on the front so that the light wouldn't blind her. She's shorter than I am, and she didn't like how the light resonated out front. And So I will fix that in a minute. Also, you could see me messing with the cord. I didn't have a super well designed idea for that. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. In this case, I just literally screwed a screw into the end of the shelf, which once again would not be the final design, to hook the cable over. That way the power cord stays away from the stove and is not going to get hot and melt and isn't as unsightly. And as you can see, I was testing the light there. And so I did all the drilling of holes and stuff off of screen, but same process. Measured it, split it in half, and then split it into thirds so that I could make 3 holes so that I could screw this cap on. And it's a 1x3 is what I've got here. Just once again, pre-finished trim wood, and it's not the same length either. I just used what I had once again because it's temporary, like I said. And as you can see, I'm actually using the Harbor Freight 4-volt screwdriver, and I'm driving those sheetrock screws into the pine wood. So those are 1 1/4 sheetrock screws into that, 1-inch pine trim wood, and it drove and countersunk the heads without it being a pre-countersunk hole, which tells me, it's got sufficient power to do that kind of smaller stuff. Which was impressive. I didn't even think it would do that. I thought I might have to pre-drill the holes for the screw to actually go in, but it on both materials. All I had to do was pre-drill the hole on the face board, and it screwed itself. It would send the screw in and pre-sink the head a little bit, and now it's finished. It looks a little wonky here, and that's just simply because the wood is warped. Once again, it's temporary. I just wanted something up for a light over the stove for the moment. You could put like seasoning or whatever up there, and that's what we've got. It's finished and it's working.